I've been gone for a while, but I'm back. Yeah. No, seriously. Here I am to talk about Venezuela. Si, senor. Uh, Man-made disaster in Venezuela, according to an article from Reason.com, Free Minds, Free Markets. The worst humanitarian crisis in modern Venezuelan history is unfolding against the backdrop of a power struggle between President Nicolas Maduro and opposition leader Juan Guaido. Excuse me. Because Maduro's government has refused to publish basic data, it is virtually impossible to know the full scale of the disaster. The human rights organizations, independent agencies, and journalists on the ground have painted a gruesome picture of a country in economic ruin, with crumbling infrastructure leading to chronic, power blackouts and residents unable to meet basic human needs. Food shortages began in earnest in 2015 when supermarket shelves went empty. Venezuelans reported waiting hours to get the few items available for purchase each day. While the part of this crisis has lessened in the past year, hyperinflation and the price of food have risen severely. As a result, many Venezuelans face a double bind. Either they cannot find basic staples, or they cannot afford them. In a study published in 2018 by a group of Venezuelan universities, 61% of survey respondents said they went to bed hungry on a regular basis, with 89% saying they did not have enough money to buy food. Over 60% reported having lost weight as a result of food scarcity. Ah, yes! The infamous Maduro diet. Lose 20 pounds or die trying. But in all seriousness here, folks, this is terrible. And yes, I will blame this on socialism. To an extent. This is also, to an extent, caused by deliberate human action. So it's a little mix of everything. The United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, or FAO, confirmed in 2018 that the rate of undernourishment in Venezuela has more than doubled, from less than 5% between 2008 and 2013 to 11.7% between 2015 and 2017. Putting food on the table is not the only problem Venezuelans face. The most recent comprehensive report released by Human Rights Watch revealed the country's healthcare system to be in utter collapse, marked by a severe shortage of medicines and health supplies, hospitals without regular access to utilities, and the deterioration of emergency services. The study confirmed numerous reports that outbreaks of once eliminated vaccine-preventable diseases such as measles, I never could figure out how the hell this one's supposed to be pronounced, diphtheria, and tuberculosis have resurfaced. Maternal and infant mortality rates have also risen dramatically. How could it get this bad? While U.S. sanctions imposed in 2017 may have played a role, it was ultimately the Venezuelan government that created the conditions for today's catastrophes. Back in the mid-2000s, the late President Hugo Chavez had direct access to the highest oil windfalls of any administration in Venezuelan history. He engaged in reckless spending, nationalized and ruined hundreds of private firms, and installed a currency control scheme that distorted the prices of imported goods. Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of these socialist politicians do. They try and nationalize everything and end up wasting everyone's money. This has happened before, folks. There's a reason why socialist nations keep crashing, and admittedly, deliberate human action is a part. But you can't just lend all that responsibility to the state. Not only does the government then become inefficient, but it also ends up screwing everything up. Always. This had grave consequences by 2017. The FAO found domestic food production in Venezuela could sustain just 30% of the population. The group cited the regime's destruction of the farm industry as one of the main reasons. As the price of oil declined and money began to run out in 2015, Maduro, Chavez's hand-picked successor, acted to curb imports at a time when Venezuelans needed them most. Ugh, that makes too much sense. So you mean to tell me that a chronic money waster deliberately, specifically chose a city bus driver? Yep. Initially, Maduro denied the existence of a humanitarian crisis. When he could no longer hide the problems, he blamed it on an economic war by the United States, which he said was bent on destroying his regime. For years, Maduro refused to allow aid of any kind into the country, saying it was a foreign intervention disguised as humanitarian assistance. He finally relented in late March, allowing the Red Cross to bring in food and medicine under his strict supervision. The government's reason for controlling the flow of aid are sinister. A 2016 investigation by the Associated Press revealed that the reselling of scarce goods has become a means of personal profit for the armed forces. The humanitarian crisis thus plays into the regime's hands. By controlling lucrative food and medicine resources at the ports, Venezuela's military enriches itself and is likely to heed calls by the opposition to abandon Maduro. Or less likely, pardon. But most poor Venezuelans cannot afford to purchase food at all. Their only hope is in handouts provided by Maduro. According to the 2018 study, 87.5% of citizens were receiving government food boxes in 2017. As a result, millions of people are caught in a dependency trap that drastically increases the cost of mobilizing against the current regime. Oh yeah. Their government is corrupt. Socialist governments usually are, because it makes them very powerful, very rich. Share and share alike puts all the power into the government's hands. And absolute power corrupts absolutely, not electively. It ruins people. It absolutely does. Admittedly, this does sound an awful lot like rhetoric. But allow me to say something that might give my words a little clarity. They keep calling Sweden a socialist country. However, what they forget is that Sweden gave up on socialism in the 1970s when it brought their annual GDP growth to 0%. Because GDP growth is a direct result of the rich and wealthy being able to invest in stock. GDP growth has to do with how much wealth and how much material goods your nation produces, therefore requiring someone to be able to invest in those very areas. And probably socialists say, well, let's have the government invest in it. Yeah, but when's the last time you saw a socialist government actually investing in a good or service? Versus in a capitalist country where they invest in them all the fucking time. They buy up stock, they actually buy the product, and then as stock increases, demand increases, and it becomes available to the poor. That almost never happens in socialist countries. Trickle down is a real thing. And obviously, a president like Reagan gave it too much power, gave it too much precedence, saying, oh, trickle down will fix everything. No, it won't fix everything. It'll fix a lot of things, but it won't fix everything. Yes, the rich will invest in products that will eventually become available to the poor. But that only helps if the poor actually have the money to afford the products when it finally reaches into their target market. See, that's the thing. But when you try and make everyone share and share alike and spread the money around, you end up spreading yourself thin. And pretty soon, no one can afford it. That's the difference. So socialism does play a part in this. Because food is ultimately too expensive, and no one has the money to invest in it to make it any cheaper. And not only that, but ultimately the government has proven themselves to be greedy, callous, and interested only in their personal power at this point. Maduro is a dictator. And don't fool yourself into thinking that Juan Guaido is going to be any different. He'll be just as much of a dictator, if not more. Anyway.